Hey Zaleafers, this is SUPERZOMGBBQ, and today we are going to be talking about one of the hottest topics in WWE Supercard. Not just right now, but in the history of WWE Supercard. But actually, I think this goes beyond WWE Supercard. I think this actually transcends into gaming itself. And to expand the subject, whether games should reset or not. Of course, what I'm speaking about is the probable and very likely WWE Supercard Season 4. Now, although there wasn't a complete reset between Season 2 and Season 3, they did actually introduce something very similar, which was a lot of tiers being introduced at once. But unlike the transition to Season 1 to Season 2, there was no loss of cards. You could still use every image on the game, and you can still use your Season 2 cards and Season 1 cards on Season 3. On Season 2, your Season 1 cards had an incredibly limited use, and your Season 2 cards, well, unless you were lucky and got yourself into quite a high tier, those Season 1 cards are practically gone forever. But they were brought back in Season 3 because of the backlash that happened as a result of the Season 1 to Season 2 reset, or as what's commonly known, Let's Talk on Monday. That was a great idea, Cat Daddy. But today I'm here to tell you that it is highly likely that Season 3 to Season 4 will be another complete reset, and I'm going to tell you 5 reasons as to why that's going to happen. Now, if you want to see more of these kind of videos and more WWE Supercard W2K18 as the news happens, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel whilst you're there. But let's get right into it. 5 reasons why the next WWE Supercard will be a reset. Number 1 is tokens. Now, tokens were introduced into the game in Season 2. Because in Season 1, technically all you had to do was collect cards off the board, get cards from King of the Rings, and then pro them, and you had yourself a perfect pro. In Season 2 to Season 3, they actually introduced tokens, which meant that you had to actually play games. You couldn't just level your cards up, but you also had to introduce tokens to certain stats. Now, back in Epic, Ultra Rare tier, in fact going back to Common tier, we started with 1 to 5 different tokens. So there was actually a skill behind tokening cards in certain ways, especially the top level cards. For example, I can remember Survivor Seth Rollins and Legendary Paige being particularly useful because they had very different stats against some of the higher level cards, and it actually introduced a tiny bit of skill to the game, where if you tokened your cards well, or as some people would say, the right way, then you had an advantage over others. In the latter tiers, however, and I would say from Hardened tier to WrestleMania 33 tier, we have had tons of tokens. Now those tokens are up to 10 for the single and 11 for the pro, which means the more tiers we have, the more tokens we have. The more the tokens, the more likely it is that the cards are going to be almost exactly identical, and the bigger likelihood that there's going to be more and more people drawing games in King of the Rings because the cards are exactly the same, or that games will become reliant purely on support cards and abilities, what we call a proc in the game. Now, if you think about it now, if we have 2 more tiers, then you're going to be introducing 11 tokens for a single, and then 12 for a pro, and then 12 for singles, and another one for a pro. So you're actually going to end up with cards that are exactly the same, which makes absolutely 0 sense. Especially if the cards are moving forward and becoming more and more powerful, it makes sense to completely reset them back to square one. So you can introduce tokens again, but in a lower level. So you can introduce tokens to tiers like a new Epic or a Legendary tier or a new Survivor tier, which means that games are no longer based on luck, well, technically, but actually based on how you token your cards. And people will have to think more about, and there'll be more strategy around tokening your cards properly. Number 2. Licensing for images. Stars like AJ Lee, Rey Mysterio, Bad News Barrett, Hulk Hogan, Cody Rhodes, Ryback have been in WWE Supercard for a long time. However, there's one thing in common with all those superstars: they have left WWE and have moved on to some pastures greener, some pastures not so greener. And there's a lot of them that probably have had their images expire licensing. Alternatively, WWE or 2K just don't want them in the game anymore. And one of the biggest features of WWE Supercard Season 3 was the ability to use pretty much any image you had in your catalogue. I cannot see that being something you can use in the future, especially with the likes of new superstars, UK Championship Superstars 205 Live coming into the game which haven't been utilised. Now, I don't know anything about the licensing deal that 2K have with WWE, but I would imagine that they would want to introduce those new cards into the game, especially the likes of the United Kingdom Champion, the Cruiserweight Champions, and the big Cruiserweight stars, because they are more relevant nowadays. Now, for anyone who's an old school WWE fan like me, it's quite nice to see the likes of Rey Mysterio still in the game, even though you can't really use his card. And no new cards are available. But just like in WWE 2K games, such as 2K14, 15, 16, just like the old SmackDown vs. Raw's, Attitude, Warzone, all of those games had to have updated rosters because some people just had their deals expire and they were no longer available to be put in the game. And remember, every time an image is used, they compensate the superstar by providing them a percentage of the revenue generated. Now, I don't know if this applies to WWE Supercard, but I would assume so, given several superstars left Season 2. But in Season 3, they magically came back, which I originally was told when I was in Seattle for Season 3 previews that that was not going to happen. But that is a big topic, is that potentially a lot of card images could be lost. And one of the things I will plead to 2K and Cat Daddy Games is to keep as many images as possible. Whenever I've been speaking about a new WWE Supercard, a new Season 4, whatever it is that the Cat Daddy and 2K need to find some way of keeping your existing images where possible. For example, The Rock, John Cena, Triple H, for example, for current superstars. Any older superstars, that's just what happens when people leave a company. Number 3. Gameplay changes. In Season 2, there was a big change to the game. The introduction of tokens, playing games, leveling cards. There was a lot of new things, plus a new King of the Ring style. Now Season 2 brought in that new King of the Ring, plus new gameplay modes and updated gameplay modes, as well as new camera angles, new graphics, finishers. There was a lot of big changes. They also introduced brand new ladder awards and to introduce new gameplay changes to the game, especially if you're changing something about the way the game works. And I refer to the likes of FIFA Ultimate Team for this. If you want to introduce changes to the cards to make them better, to allow them to be more customizable, for example, then you're going to need to potentially change an entire game. And we are actually looking at there being 14 different tiers. Now, I don't believe that they would go back through all 14 of those tiers to change every single card to benefit from new gameplay changes. For example, a 5th stat, or 3 stats for a proc, for example, or maybe the ability to change arrows. I just cannot see them going through all those tiers to introduce gameplay changes. For example, to freshen the game up, to make it look new, to give it new graphics, to put new logos in the game, such as SmackDown Live, Raw, 205 Live, new stages, maybe show some stages after the likes of Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, for example. If they're introducing all of those new things, they're going to need to update the game quite significantly, and that's another reason why I believe they're going to use the reset to introduce brand new gameplay elements. Otherwise, the game is pretty much exactly the same every single year, and some players are going to get bored of the same thing. It freshens up the game, it makes people want to come back for more, and as long as people have got their images, I think if the gameplay changes are good, I'm not just talking about brand new game modes here, we're talking about pure changes to the gameplay and the way the game looks. I would imagine that a new reset would also bring in new gameplay and new options for the cards. Number 4! Now, number 4 is about the amount of tiers. Now, I mentioned this already, but in Season 3 now, we have 14 tiers in the game, and it's highly likely that between now and Season 4, or whatever the next WWE Supercard is going to be, we're going to have another 1 or 2 tiers added. That's 16 tiers. 16! Jesus! And for a new starter, despite rewards in Money in the Bank, you got the likes of Ring Domination, Road to Glory, new game modes, Royal Rumble. Even with that, and climbing through the tiers at a decent pace, it still takes a long time to get from common to WrestleMania 33, and that is something that people may just decide they don't want to do, especially if you're not spending money or you don't have a good team. Now, whilst I appreciate, and I will tell you this now, I am loving the fact that we have so many cards and so many diverse tiers in WWE Supercard, the fact that it's such a huge amount of content to new players might be scary. And I don't mean scary as in, put that thing in the shadows, or the thing you think is under your bed when you go to sleep when you turn the light off. I'm talking about the mere idea of having to counter 16 tiers to get yourself up to the top tier. Some players will just give up. If we use Season 2 as an example, a reset would allow people to start at common, uncommon, rare, super rare, ultra rare, epic, and legendary, 7 tiers. Now, if they introduce 7 or 8 tiers into a brand new game, that's a lot less of a trek to get to the top tier, and it would be to trawl your way through 16 of them. And that also introduces new players to the game for new card designs, etc. It just makes sense. And if you think about it, if we just carried on from Season 2 to Season 3 to Season 4, you would end up with possibly somewhere around the region of 24 tiers by the end of Season 4. And it just wouldn't work with tokens. It just doesn't make sense. So unless there's a drastic change in the way the game works, it is just not gonna happen.
Number 5.
Stat points. And that sounds crazy, but numbers. Cards at the moment are going beyond 50,000 for stats. Some cards, when tagged up together and combined, reach over 55, 60,000 in stat points. There is no way you can continue in that light. The numbers have to get smaller. Back in legendary tier, for example, you had numbers of 6 to 800 for a single and 13 to 16 to 1700 for a pro. That's a lot more manageable than looking at something like 100,000 to 130 to 200,000 and bigger and bigger and bigger. The smaller numbers just wouldn't matter anymore and the cards would just lose space. And again, unless they're going to go through the entirety of the game, which is unlikely, and restat every single card and start removing tiers, I cannot see that they are going to continue this game of raising numbers one after another after another. So there is your 5 reasons as to why I believe that the next WWE Supercard will be a complete reset. And the next thing I want to talk about is why that's a good thing. People are naturally going to be concerned about the money they've spent on the game and the amount of time they put into the game. And this is where I introduce and remind people about something called loyalty fusions. Now, I will say this now. Loyalty fusions, if they come back, would have to be massively changed. And I mean increased in large numbers. And the images would have to be allowable for every single card that's physically licensed in Season 1, Season 2 and Season 3 to make this something people would be happy with. The last thing you want is to have to choose between certain cards as to which ones you can use the images of. Choosing between which cards you use to bring across to a new game and start off in a higher tier is very, very different. And the Loyalty Fusion Chamber of Past allowed people to get a heads up into the game. So for example, you could trade across certain cards from Season 1 to Season 2 and they would become brand new Season 2 Ultra Rares. Now I know a lot of you are probably thinking, Ultra Rare? I'm in WrestleMania 33 tier, this is blasphemy. But in the new season or a new WWE Supercard, there would only be 7 or 8 tiers probably, or even 6 tiers, maybe 9 tiers, who knows at this point. Introducing all of those brand new tiers would mean that Ultra Rare would be pretty good. And in fact, I actually did a comparison and it would be as good as you going from SummerSlam tier in Season 2 to Harden tier in Season 3. So the difference is actually not that bad compared from Season 2 to Season 3. And then if you was to move Season 3 to Season 4 and allow most players to go from common to ultra rare tier, that's actually not a bad thing. So loyalty fusions could play a big part in the happiness of people changing cards over, and images are a big part as to whether people are going to be happy with a brand new game or not. The other thing is it equals the playing field, and every so often you do have to equal the field to allow new players to enjoy their game. A game is made up of a community, and that community has to work together. Now, what I don't agree with is losing everything you use or have used in WWE Supercard, which is one of the reasons why Season 3 is, and still in my opinion, the best Supercard made. It's not without its problems, but it is the best one made because you can still use every image you collected from Season 1 to Season 3. And also think about it, games like FIFA, Madden, My NBA, NHL Supercard, for example, 2 other Cat Daddy games, and Pro Evolution, most sports games reset every single year. In fact, WWE 2K resets every year. Now, I appreciate you don't spend money on the game as much as you would in Supercard, and you're not losing too much progress, but you still every year have to create a wrestler, or a footballer in FIFA, or a soccer player, whatever you want to call it, or create a character. You still have to do that. In WWE 2K, for example, you lose all the DLC that you've just bought. You lose characters that you previously had access to, but people still spend money on it every single year. Now, some people aren't going to like that, and it's totally understandable, but refreshing the game and making it good for everyone is a good thing for all players, not just the ones who are at the top already and don't want anything to change, because eventually they would get bored of the game and move on. And if there's no new players and no current players, there's no game. The players are the most important part about the game. You, the community, are the most important part of the game, and if you're not playing the game, then the game doesn't exist, and most importantly, WWE Supercard ceases to exist. So let me know what you think about WWE Supercard Season 3 potentially becoming an opportunity to reset the entirety of the game back to square one in the comment section below. As I said, I'm a big fan of this if they allow you to keep the images of the cards you've got already and collect a catalogue of all the card images, even if you can't use those cards in the future. And if you liked what you saw, remember to like this video and remember to share it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I will see you all very soon. And one last thing, and that is to Zully!